2022. This workshop is going to be recorded, as you can see here. We are just recording the large group presentations and discussion and not the breakouts. So hopefully that's okay with all of you. This workshop is co-hosted by East Bay Getting to Zero's Linkage Network and the Bay Area AIDS Education Training Center, or AETC. My name is Sophie Wong. I am an advisor for East Bay Getting to Zero and AETC, and the medical director for HIV Access. And I just want to shout out the wonderful people who designed and will be presenting this workshop for you. There's a whole team of really amazing folks, including Judy Eliashar and Angela Moore, who are East Bay Getting to Zero Housing Group co-facilitators, as well as Ramon Jackson, who is our advisory board member, Ramon will be leading our healing practice and is a panelist. Jason Lugo and Cassandra Ekdawi are also joining us as presenters and panelists. We have Sean Demmons, who is the director of the Bay Area AETC, who will be leading our networking activity. Jessica Price is our associate director of Bay Area AETC and is moderating the whole Zoom. Dr. Sammy Lubega, Yamini Asugwara Batnagar, and ZJ Eskman from East Bay Getting to Zero are helping us with our breakouts, as well as Vibe and chat monitoring. And Megan Crowley from HIV Access will be taking notes and helping us with our breakouts as well. So thank you to all of you for joining us today. Please introduce yourself in chat if you haven't done so already. And we will start with a group word cloud. So this is how you join. The word cloud is what comes to mind when you think about housing. So what does that evoke for you? What word or description or feeling? And if you can hyphenate any of your phrases, that'll stick the words together. You join this poll by going to your browser and typing in pollev.com/EBGTZ for East Bay Getting to Zero. Or you can do it by text message by texting the letters EBGTZ, could be lowercase, to the number 37607. You'll get a message that you've joined, and then you can text your word. So if you take out your phones or if you're on your computer, you can go to your browser to pollev.com, EBGTZ, and then write your word. And it should appear here. All right, so we're starting to see some words here. The other thing is that you can put in emojis. So you can also express yourself through emojis. We see that it's a human right, it's essential, frustrating is getting bigger, so is human right and essential. So the more people type in the word, the bigger it gets on our word cloud. There's a lack of housing, it's frustrating. Affordable housing is important. It's inaccessible. It's a crisis. There's a right to housing. Great. Unstable. And I think that's right, human right. And I'm going to give you a few more seconds to add. And again, you can do emojis if you like. All right. There are big costs. It's a crisis. Let's see, inaccessible, displacement. It's competitive to get housing. Yeah. All right, thank you. So this poll will stay up and you can enter your words as we go along as well. And then we'll do a post-workshop poll, word cloud as well, to see if things shift by the end of this workshop. So why are we as an HIV access, as an HIV network talking about housing? And it's because these two things are very interconnected. And here's some data behind that from the East Bay. What we have found is that people experiencing homelessness in Alameda County are 12.5 times more likely to be diagnosed with HIV than the general population, 12.5 times more likely. And people experiencing homelessness, if they are diagnosed with HIV, they are 4 times less likely to be virally suppressed. And this was seen in the HIV Access network in Alameda County as well. So one, homelessness has a big impact on HIV prevention and transmission because there are higher risks with people experiencing homelessness. And then if you are diagnosed with HIV and experiencing homelessness, you're less likely to be engaged in care and virally suppressed. So a lot more challenges around accessing treatment and staying on treatment. So it's very important for us to address both in housing settings to address HIV and make sure people are in care. And then also on the flip side, for people living with HIV to make sure they are engaged in care and also just to provide more housing options and stability and safety for folks. How are we going to talk about this today? We're going to start with a healing practice, which Ramon is going to lead us on. Sean is going to lead us on a networking activity so we get to know each other better. Judy and Angela will be talking about their brand new hot off the press East Bay housing guides and walk us through them. And then Judy, Angela, Ramon, Jason, and Cassandra will be sharing stories, lived experience, and the whole process around housing application, getting housing here in the East Bay. Then we'll have a little bit of time for a large group question and discussion period. At 12:30, we're going to end the formal program, and then there will be an optional discussion between 12:30 and 1 if you want to stay for that. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ramon to lead us on a healing practice.
Good morning, everyone. Today's discussion is a heart-to-heart discussion. Housing isn't easy, and we need to use our heart in doing the work. So we're going to have a heart-to-heart conversation. I invite you to mute yourself. Find a comfortable space. Close your eyes. You can turn off your visuals if you like. And breathe. Taking a deep breath and connecting to your heart. Connecting to your heartbeat. Find the beat. Locate your passion. Feel your center. Be grateful for your heart. This heartbeat connects you to everything and everyone. Everyone's rhythm, heart. Find love for yourself there in your heartbeat. Breathing deeply. Exhaling all negativity. Finding peace in your heartbeat. Locating joy with every rhythm that you feel. Finding compassion. Locating strength. How does that feel? To feel the strength of your heartbeat connecting with other heartbeats and joy. And compassion. Feel restored with every heartbeat. Feel renewed. Feel joy. You are capable because you are.
Thank you so much, Ramon, for grounding us in this practice. So thank you, all of you who are joining us now, and thank you, Ramon, for leading us, as always, on a wonderful healing and grounding practice. So great to be in community with all of you. I'm going to now transition to our networking activity with Sean. So I'm going to turn this over to Sean now.
All right. Thanks, Sophie. Good morning, everybody. So good to see so many familiar names in the chat. And since we're not in person, this is how we're networking right now. We're going to give you all, we have 20 minutes allotted for this time because folks asked for more time to kind of talk and share with one another and meet new people. So we will be broken into, I think, smaller groups, 3 or 4. When you get into the room, we want you to share your name, your organization, and your role. If there are any updates in your organization, staff changes, any type of information that may be different since the last time we got together in the spring, then share with your partners in your group. One highlight from your summer. What did you do that just really stood out for you in the summer? I think this is the 3rd summer where we're still kind of looking at COVID, but people got a little free. So I'm interested to hear what people were doing. And then, we've had a lot of discussion in our planning calls about really wanting to see each other so we can actually network the old-fashioned way where we talk to people in person. And so I know we've talked about it in previous workshops, trying to assess if people were feeling safe to meet in person. So we want you to really have a conversation and talk about what would it take, what would make you feel safe? What type of venue would it need to be? What type of COVID protocols would need to be in place for you to feel safe to meet in person and have our next workshop for the spring. And so we want you to really take time to talk about that and give us that feedback. And then when you come back, we're not going to go around because that takes a lot of time, but we're going to have you drop all of that information in the chat. I will be collecting it, and then we will summarize later on after we've had our presentation. All right. Are there any questions about what the assignment is? Okay, cool. Then I'll say, Jessica, go ahead and then send everybody to their breakout.
All right, here we go. See you soon.
Sophie, I'm gonna just give the final instruction back and then turn it back to you, right? I don't see you on here. You must be on. Oh, there you are.
Sure.
I see you. So many squares. Thank you. I hope you all had as much fun in your group as I did. I was in the room with Rebecca, Renelle, and Lily, and we had a great discussion. And so I'm going to type in the chat the things that we discussed that we would need to have an in-person meeting in the spring. And then I tweaked it a little bit because I did the networking activity. And I just thought in our group, I wanted to talk about what are the pros and cons, because hopefully that'll help us, think about what we miss about seeing each other and also the things we don't miss, because we did come up with some of those. So I invite you to do that, and I will be paying attention and collecting that. And then I think Sophie's going to give us some time to summarize at the end of the meeting. But thank you all for participating. Turn it back to you, Sophie.
Great, thanks. Sean, did you want folks to write into the chat too some of their ideas?
Yes, I want them to put in there that whatever your group discussed, write that in the chat. What the question was, what would you need to meet in person for our spring workshop? So just drop it in the chat, and we're monitoring the chat. And while we continue on with today's program, and then at the end, we'll come back and kind of summarize what folks said they needed.
Great.
That's good?
Thanks.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right, awesome.
Okay. All right, thanks everybody. I'm going to come back to our slides here, and we are now going to transition to talking from the breakout session to our new East Bay housing guides. And for this segment, I'd love to invite Judy Eliashar and Angela Moore. They have been our East Bay Getting to Zero Housing Working Group co-facilitators, and collectively they have decades of experience and wisdom around helping people navigating the housing system here in the East Bay, particularly Judy in Alameda County and Angela in Contra, Costa County. And they've captured some of their wisdom and expertise in these guides. So I'm going to turn this over to Judy and Angela to tell us about these guides.
Okay, so I think I'm going first. Hi, everybody. I'm Judy Eliashar. I'm glad to be here this morning. Thank you all for coming today, and I hope that this will be helpful and worthwhile. So last year, Angela and I were asked to co-facilitate the work group that would prepare the housing and homelessness component of East Bay Getting to Zero's 5-year strategy. And one of the key elements of the housing strategy that we came up with is to develop ways to promote improved coordination between the HIV system of care and the agencies that provide both affordable housing and homelessness services. So in addition to creating more opportunities for improved service coordination and data sharing, we also identified a need for housing training for staff who are working with people who are living with HIV. And the housing guides and the training workshops, there was one last October as well, are part of East Bay Getting to Zero's housing training initiative. So we decided to develop 2 guides, one for Alameda County and one for Contra Costa County, because while affordable and subsidized housing are pretty much federal programs, they do operate really differently in each area based on decisions made by local government. So the Alameda County Guide is going to be presented in 2 volumes. You will have received the first volume either yesterday or today, and volume 2 should be ready in the next several days. So in addition to the content that's covered in volume 1, volume 2 is going to address temporary housing, shared housing, and programs that serve people in Alameda County who are experiencing homelessness. It'll also cover a little bit of information about landlord-tenant relations and programs that assist with both move-in costs and emergency aid for delinquent rent and utilities. And there will also be some sample forms and a list of resources that will be in the final part of the second volume. So that's it for me. I'd like to turn it over to Angela Moore, my colleague and dear friend. And I just want to let everyone know working with her is truly a joy. So Angela.
Thank you, Judy. Hello, everyone. I'm Angela Moore, and I represent Contra Costa County for this part of the manual. And I don't want to repeat everything that Judy just said, but that's what we are also capturing in Contra Costa. So in Contra Costa County and Alameda County, in the manual, volume 1, you'll see some similarities and some differences when it does come to how we operate for housing. The manuals were created to support those in need of housing and who aren't familiar with the process and the resources that are available in both counties.
Angela, I think you may have froze.
Our county.
Oh.
Did I miss something, Sophie?
You froze for a few seconds, but you're back now.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. And we also wanted you all to see how the counties operate and the steps that we take to support those who are in need of housing. And as Judy said, volume 2 will come, and it'd be probably a more deeper dive into some of the things that we experience and things that we use to support those who are looking for housing and some of the people that are definitely living with HIV and AIDS. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And just like big shout out and congratulations to you two for putting together such rich information in these guides. So check it out if you haven't already. It's a great place to get started. It's the whole first part is around starting a housing application. And I think that's a really great place to start if you are helping somebody through this process. So with that, we are actually going to go to our panel discussion, because now I think what's really important, what we all think is really important, is hearing the lived experience of actually going through the housing application process and learning from the people who have done that. So I'd like to invite Angela to introduce Ramon for our panel.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. I'm glad everyone is able to participate. I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Ramon Jackson, and I have a few things to say. Ramon is someone who is talented, kind, spiritual, and educated. This young man has 3 associate degrees, 1 bachelor degree, and 2 masters. And that's outstanding. But the thing is, he still needed housing. I want you to know that Ramon is someone who is also someone who understands the housing process and what it's like to need housing, because he's been there. And I always want to say, you don't want to judge a book by its cover, because with all that he had behind him, he still needed housing. Through the housing process, he was always kind, humble, and open-minded. Whatever was thrown at him, he took it with grace. Ramon's love and compassion of helping others allows for him what I call his heart had a heart. Even though he needed housing, he was patient. So everyone, please welcome Mr. Ramon Jackson.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Angela, for those really kind words. Yes, I was patient, but I also had to be my own advocate through this journey. You can't remain quiet. I'm trying to keep my screen level here because there's a little bit of sliding going on. I want to get started by saying when I met Angela in 2019, I had a tumultuous breakup and I had to leave my housing situation. So I was homeless. Stayed on some friends' couches, room with some friends. You never know what it's like until you're having lived with someone that you didn't intend on living with. And the situation got to the point where traveling back and forth from Newman, way out of county, into the Bay Area to handle personal business and things like that got in the way. And it became easier for me to sleep in my car around the lake. I had to do what I had to do. And sometimes we are in a position where we're encountering circumstances that we weren't thinking about, such as homelessness. In dealing with housing, I encountered Angela. Angela was a breath of fresh air. She intentionally was positive about my circumstances, which was new for me. I had not encountered someone being so positive in regards to being able to find housing. Oh yeah, we can do this. She let me know it was going to be work. She helped me a lot in regards to getting my paperwork together and being able to have a support system towards being prepared for housing. That means credit checks, that means getting all your IDs and paperwork that you need necessary, talking to your doctors to make sure they're ready to be able to write out any letters for when you're finding some place that you want to live. You have to think positively. Get your clients to think positively in regards to the process because it makes it easier. Angela became part of my support system. And we put our ears to the ground and our noses to the grind, and we started looking at places. So she had a lot of different units that she was connected with. You have to make connections. And I started applying. Because I have a good support system and I was not afraid of letting people know that I was looking for housing and that I needed housing badly, and put me in connection with some of my own people that I've never used before. I'm, like I said, part of the Oakland Transitional Grant Planning Council. At one point, I was the co-chair. And I spoke truthfully to people about what my needs were. And through Judy, I got a recommendation for a property. She had a client that couldn't get in. He went missing, and I applied. It turned things around. I was able to apply. Unfortunately, there was a lot of turnaround in the housing industry, so it made my process longer than what it should have been. This is when advocacy had to come into place. There was one point where they attempted to make me recertify for the apartment that I was already approved for because they had a turnover and that person wanted to make me recertify. I had to call corporate office and talk to the vice president to find out what was going on and why it was taking so long for the rehab process. Once approved for the apartment, I ended up waiting for, I think, 3-4 months before they cleaned it up and got it ready for me to move in. Yes, I did have to be my own advocate. I did have to be able to turn to my support system and say all the things that I wish that I could say to the people in the office. You need a place to be able to vent. Throughout the process, Cassandra was helping me with different service providers. I got turned to Bach. There's different places that you have to look to be able to see if you are compatible. Find out from your clients what's a no-go, what's a go. Some people don't want to go into shelters. You might have to find other alternatives for them. Bach was a great help for me, and it allowed me to be able to connect to other services and other providers and other funding that I didn't think I had. So it's beneficial on a lot of levels to shift the narrative of housing to something that is a can do from something that's so hard and so difficult, because it changes how the process works for us. If we keep positive, keep patient, I was able to move in to that unit in November of 2019. I have an apartment now in Oakland that I was in from January of 2020, and I've been here for 2 years. The process isn't fast, but it can be quicker than you think. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramon. Just really grateful to you for sharing this experience, and also just to share your guidance around what it's like to embark on this whole process, and to just remember all the human parts of it. So some of the key points that we heard you talk about, and please chime in, other panelists as well, if you have other resources or other key points that you've heard Ramon talk about. So housing not being easy, really wanting to be intentional about being positive, and to remind yourself that it's not fast, but it will happen. It can happen. To have all your documents ready, and to understand what the no-goes are, right? The limits and the no-goes are for folks, and connecting with all your various resources and networks, and really having patience and speaking up like you did, Ramon, when you had to advocate for yourself around the recertification process, and being consistent, proactive, and really trying, having your support systems in place to remain positive. Anything else folks want to add? Other resources?
I wouldn't say, well, also resources, but it does depend on the individual. And I see where someone said, in the chat that, sometimes people don't have the same strength that Ramon had. You would be surprised, as I tell people, pressure makes a diamond. And when people have to be uncomfortable, you'll pull some things out of them. I was grateful that Ramon, I didn't promise anything to him. I said, hold my hand and let me see what I can do. And he trusted me, and we have to build trust. And I was ready to go on the front line and even risk my job of trying to get him housed, because he came into Contra Costa County. It was not Alameda County, it was Contra Costa County. And he advocated, and I was amazed, because he was like, I thought, oh, you're doing my job. He was advocating for himself. He saw what was going on, because he was there at the unit, and he advocated. He called corporate. He was able to get in the unit, get a few things, and then when he had to go, he left. But giving people the tools and the skills that if a person that's advocating you was to fall back and something was happening, even if it's a script, you've got to get that toughness. And like I said, pressure makes a diamond, and Ramon was my diamond of many diamonds, to get housed. It's tough. It's not easy, because also the availability has to be there. And that's what we're all fighting against. I know that all of us on here that does housing for our clients and our population, the availability has to be there. But you
Angela,
also, yes,
can I chime in for a second?
yes, you go right ahead.
I get it. People say everybody doesn't have the same strength. I came into Angela's office completely distraught because I knew how bad housing was. I knew how difficult the process was. I've been trying to find my own housing for over 10 years while I was with my partner. It's daggone near impossible. So I was despondent. And the fact that she had such a positive attitude and her track record spoke volumes to me because she was personally in the trenches helping people get housing. And it changed my attitude and it changed my mode in being able to come into a room with someone who was so positive in and around the possibilities. I didn't have those possibilities. There was none for me. So for me to encounter someone, it's like, oh yeah, that's what I do. Huh? Oh, we can get you housing. We'll find you something. I don't want to be in the ghetto. Baby, I get it. We do what we need to do to get you to where we need to get you to. She spoke to me as if she was my auntie, a real good friend. She was honest, but she made a connection heart to heart. And I believed her. And that empowered me. That empowered me to do things that I hadn't intended on doing, to interact with areas and agencies that I had never encountered before. And sometimes it was a mess to be down there in those waiting rooms with some of those co-existing issues. But I pushed it through because I had my advocate backing me. I could call Angela from the waiting room and go, am I sure that I want to be down here? It's a mess down here. And she'd give me my pep talk and I'd go handle my business and then find out I was awarded $1,600 to be able to move in for deposits or whatever. When you have that support system, when you have that intentional positivity, it changes things. It empowers people on different levels that when she talks about being a diamond, you believing in them sets course to a whole nother vein of power that person has because they might not have had anybody to believe in them in quite some time. I just wanted to add that because yeah, we're down, but we're not out the count. We still have some miles left. We just need somebody to believe in us.
Thank you, Ramon. Thank you, Angela. That's beautiful. And really just getting to the heart and the human aspect, the heart and soul of this work. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, we are going to now invite Judy to come introduce our next panelist, Jason Lugo.
Okay, Jason, you ready? Might want to unmute yourself so we can hear you. I am honored to introduce Jason Curtis Lugo. Jason came to the United States from Trinidad about 10 years ago as an asylum seeker. And after having worked, after having been granted a work permit, he worked in education and mental health services for several years. Now, unfortunately, the work permit expired in 2020 when Trump was president and our country had reached a new low in its hostility towards immigrants. So no longer able to work, Jason had to give up his apartment. He moved into a room rental. And when that became too expensive, he began living in his car. And it was at that point in spring of 2021 that we started working together based on a referral from Colleen Tumpain, the former LCS, well, the former social worker at the clinic at Highland. Jason's story is a story of resilience and refusal to give up, even in the most difficult circumstances. He stayed focused on rebuilding his life and laying the groundwork for what he intends to accomplish in the future. So, Jason.
Yes. Thank you, Judy. I consider Judy as one of my guardian angels here. I really do appreciate her. Um, and I just want to follow up from Ramon. Um, People that we encounter and who are placed in positions, if they do not have that purposeful nature of being passionate and always remembering that they are also human and they should be humane in the sense of providing services to others. I think it makes a difference. Um, what I have noticed here is that there are a lot of people placed in positions, but they do not have the purpose and their passion towards providing excellent service is not there. So, as a professional, um, getting a professional job, being paid as a professional, from my experience, things like this. After my work permit was expired and couldn't get it renewed, I had to downsize, couldn't access a job, of course, end up homeless in my car. Depression was coming on. Because I'm in mental health, I seek help, of course. I was my own advocate and advocating and linking with other people, and hence end up with a clinical social worker linking me to Judy, of course, my house and advocate, case manager, and then other agencies that support me in terms of at least keeping me afloat. Um, my car got broken into, my computer, my sensitive information were also exposed. I experienced that where I couldn't even go into my email, things like that. So I'm still dealing with where my mail and stuff is being sent to places that I lived and people are not even receiving it. So I'm still experiencing some things here based on what took place. So that was just an experience and I'm going to share it with you all. Advice in terms of shelter facilities, I had a disappointing experience at one of the shelter when I was told to try it by the social worker. So I went into the shelter and I realized that there are a lot of at risk people placed there. And then I'm being placed there became at risk also. Being around a high population of people who are on drugs, intoxicated daily, and also being exposed to it being sold within the institution. I was, of course, had to make a decision a night where night after night that I couldn't sleep properly. I got sick, ended up going to the hospital by myself, of course, didn't have no help by no worker on that shift. Very insensitive when I told them that I was sick and I need to go to the hospital. I had to force myself out of the building, go into my car, which was parked like blocks away, and then drove to the hospital until I seek help like 6 hours after, or 7 hours. Sitting in the waiting room at the hospital. So the facilities are there, and the shelter, the makeup of it. There is the structure there, of course, physical structure. There are the facilities inside there to help people, more like in terms of rehabilitate people, bring them to awareness of where they are and how they can move forward, things like that. But then they do not have the professionals placed there to assist people coming in there who are very vulnerable. So where somebody may come in with drugs, somebody's on the street, of course, they're lacking life skills, self-esteem issues, self-worth. looking at self as being somebody special and being an individual where there's no one like me. And I will go so deep as to say that even the person who were placed there to run the facility, I had encounter with, and I felt dehumanized actually. And some of the things that I was told and I saw there, that it's only after when someone came to assist me, the person took some form of, attention to a matter coming in here because somebody else came into the picture. So again, people were placed in positions, but they do not have the purpose to change and to affect positive things in people's life as they're coming from negative to turn into positive. So again, the facilities and the shelters, and then somebody needs to do something about it. The people who are employed inside there, whether they behave because they're not well paid or whatever, that's something to look into, because people have psychological needs and there is nobody there placed to assess people. As well as, you cannot tell me that I am going into a shelter where I feel that I am going to get housing and stuff like that, but yet still I'm coming, I have a problem, it is not addressed, and I'm leaving there to go into my apartment that they may source for me, and I'm going with the same mentality. So I have no skills, no life skills to get up and clean my apartment, to take care or to pay my rent, because I have no form of responsibility, because I came from the street. I came from an environment that I do not have to. All right. So I'm just putting myself in people's shoes, and as well as my experience there. So I felt that I had to leave after I was approached by one of the guy who was always high on in the shelter. I couldn't sleep, got up, told him that about his behavior, because he's fidgeting all the time. He goes to the toilet, smoke, come back into the room, and that is something that I have to deal on a day-to-day basis. So it's not a nice experience living in a shelter. And if you really want to better yourself, it's not a place for you to get up and say, okay, I have hope, unless somebody is working with you there. And again, there is the case managers and stuff, they would tell you that the facility or the workers' facility is just to babysit. And I use the word babysit because there is nothing else they're doing for you there. And then what's about the manner in which they treat you? As I say, I felt dehumanized at times, the manner in which they treated me. All right, because they have to act to give me a little food, or to at least provide some service there that they have. This is an attitude problem. So they give you it with a face frown, like if they don't want to do it, or they will call you out in a line aggressively, embarrass you. So all of these things people go through in those shelter, which is worsening their situation. So I can see a lot of people leaving there. In fact, I experienced a lot of people left, as well as people are still leaving. False hope is given to clients there. They are not telling you certain things, and when I ask certain things, they did not even have the answer to it. Thank God for Judy. All right. So, and then after all of that happening there, that bad experience, I end up getting, because I applied to several housing agencies, and I started getting calls and stuff. I went to interviews, things like that. And I had a bad experience with one particular where the person rejected me because of my my credit check. And again, it was a matter of, because I couldn't work, I had bills to pay. It now was showing up when they did the credit check. So I had to now write a letter and explain what took place. Had to go to an agency to see if they can help me with housing. Thanks God that Judy knew about all of these things. Yeah. And I started working with even, like, for instance, tickets and stuff. So I start calling the agency and stuff, letting them know my situation. How could I work? How could I work around such things, whether they are going to approve me because I'm homeless, things like that. So I started doing a lot of stuff, advocating for myself as well as directed by Judy. Very helpful. So I was able to,
Thank you
in
so
that process.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Sorry, we are running low on time. If I may share the key points here, you've made some really important points about how it's important to have professional skills and also to really, it's crucial to be honest and truthful in these shelter settings.
Yes.
And also, like you said, to have those professional skills, we're not just babysitting people, but really supporting people and teaching them life skills through this process. Like you mentioned, not everybody comes in with skills to like clean up your space and take care of yourself. And that shelters are not for everyone. It sounds like you had a really difficult experience at the shelters with the workers and just with other people who are living at the shelters as well. And then you talked also about the importance of advocating for yourself, like Ramon talked about as well. Like you were just talking about writing letters and responding to people, and also just putting together a collaborative team of people who can support you. Did I get that right? Is there any last thing in a minute that you can share so that we can?
Yes, and as Ramon said also that you may apply. You have people who are placed also as managers in those housing facilities that give you a hard time. And I mean, I am not a person to give up things like that. And then as I was explaining, I got an interview, had to go back, write letters, things like that. They entertained me. And then after that, they still did not show me any form of respect in terms of communicating and telling me, look, it went through compliance. We are waiting, nothing like that. So, and then monies also. So they have people in positions do not know the law here. So they end up taking monies from me where they shouldn't have taken money from me. It was now being reversed. And up till now, I haven't received my refund. So I had that experience, although I'm having two places called me. I send in my papers and I am still waiting. And as much as we can say we have patience, but put yourself in the shoes of somebody homeless and living in a car. As much as you want to say somebody must be patient, the things that you go through, dehumanize, and you have to do to survive out there. And I mean, other people may have a different story. I'm just sharing about you in terms of your mental capacity when you're out there and where you may reach. So I reached a low point.
Yeah.
And then really, I had to build myself back up. Thank God for the team. And I just hope that people who are listening here, the people who are placed in positions, as well as people who are hiring people in positions to help people in house and things like that, need to really look at who they are hiring and must have some form of supervision in terms of whether they are meeting their mark, in terms of a motto is also in the shelter that tells you that they are going to uplift you, things like that, but there is no program there. There is nothing they are giving you when you leave the shelter that you are in a better position to be more responsible, to advocate for yourself, to be somebody uplifting in society and to be productive. So again, that's where I end.
Yeah, thank
you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that really tough situation, and also just reminding us all what it means to be professional and to really support people through this incredibly arduous, long, complex process. And thank you for sharing that experience. I think it'll help the people here really empathize more with how tough it is to go through all of this. So really appreciate you, Jason, for joining us and sharing that experience, both from the professional point of view and also going through it yourself. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Judy, would you like to now introduce Cassandra as our final panelist?
Oh,
Judy, and always not unmuting herself in time. Okay, so our next presenter is Cassandra Ekdawi. She's the medical case manager at Lifelong Medical Care's Ashby Health Center. Cassandra is both gifted and compassionate, and she's a fierce advocate for her clients. I can honestly say that working with her is always a rewarding and a thought-provoking experience. And I'm proud of the work that we've done together to assist some of Lifelong's clients, especially those who are among the very most marginalized in obtaining permanent affordable housing. So, Cassandra.
Thank you so much, Judy, and thank you for all of your help and the work that we've done. I could not do it without Judy. Judy reminds me that it is possible, and that just because barriers arise doesn't mean that's the end game, and we problem solve together, and I'm so grateful to have Judy. So, hi everyone, thank you for the wonderful introduction. Today, what I wanted to share is a story, because I think stories can be some of the most powerful rather than a bunch of teaching points or whatever. So I think the main themes here I'd like to address are maintaining long-term versus short-term planning and how we can support our clients in doing both of those simultaneously, and also maintaining hopefulness, but at the same time setting realistic expectations and maintaining truthful transparency. So I would like to introduce you to a gentleman for the sake of this workshop we will call Daniel. So Daniel is a African-American male in his early 30s. And this is a gentleman who I was working with for 3 years. And he was previously in and out of care, and he was struggling with some pretty intense domestic violence situations, as well as some mental illness issues that kind of went hand in hand with the domestic violence situation that was really bringing on more and more intense depression and, anxiety and stuff like that. So his housing status is he was couch surfing. That's what it looked like for him, staying with friends, or, at the time, if he was in a relationship, staying with those folks or staying with relatives, but really those things usually had a short shelf life. So he'd have to keep shuffling from place to place, taking his backpack with him, which, was really kind of the sum of his possessions in this world, right? And so how we started is, like I said, he was previously in and out of care. So the first thing I want to talk about is one thing that I really like to focus on. The main thing is trust and building rapport. And one of the ways that I like to do that is, if you come into my office and you are hungry, you are tired, you have unmet immediate needs, what can we do to meet some of your immediate needs right now? So some of the ways that we do that, of course, I'm an HIV, I'm a medical case manager. So making sure he had his HIV meds, his labs, his care, STD testing and treatment, grocery or transportation vouchers, making sure he had stuff to eat, trying to help him with nutrition. Some of these ways, making sure he was connected with CalFresh, or like I said, getting him those grocery gift cards, or getting someone connected to Project Open Hand, offering on an ongoing basis support and resources for those experiencing domestic violence or need some more mental health support. So those were some of the short-term things that I was working with Daniel to meet him where he was at, and to build trust and to build rapport through what was a long and emotional and trying process. But at the same time, as we're meeting folks' short-term needs, we also want to try to start planning long-term as well and supporting them through that. And especially in a time when that's difficult, when you are focused on, because you have to be, meeting your immediate needs of where am I going to do laundry, shower, have a roof over my head tonight, be safe, those kinds of things, get a meal for today. So then in terms of long-term, the options are housing applications, which, I always tell folks, you can wait on you can just wait out there in the world, or you can wait on a wait list, and it might not feel like much, but those are some of the things that will turn up an opportunity for him. Also, the other thing is a CES housing assessment, which is our coordinated entry system, which essentially scores folks, puts them all on a list, and then based on that list, people are given housing matches. So his initial housing assessment was done in May of 2019. And then our system changed. And before we were not allowed to know the score, and now we are. So then when the system changed, I encouraged him and connected him to get his housing assessment redone. So there, you know, in an exam room of lifelong Ashby, we called and we redid his housing assessment. And that was in November of last year, the November of 2021. So also I would like you guys all to note that there's a difference between a housing assessment and a crisis assessment, and making sure that folks are getting a housing assessment, because that's different. They might think, oh, I've been assessed, I'm in the system, I'm on the list. And that may not be true. So making sure that everyone understands that distinction. And then also to know that they must score over 80 to get a match. So, and on those assessments, encourage them to disclose their HIV status, their any mental illness, ongoing domestic violence situations, or past domestic violence, any stuff. They are one, which and that has caused them to feel unsafe. Work that they're exchanging that for housing. So there's a question there that asks folks to disclose and be honest. And the reason why this is important is because these are things that factor into their score. We don't know exactly how the algorithm works, but that is something that factors into their score. And if they don't disclose that initially, then we have to find a way to get them an updated assessment. So it's definitely somewhere where you can save you and the client some trouble in the long run. So anyways, so coming back to David, now that we've kind of talked about short-term and long-term things that we're doing for him, eventually something turned up. So he got a housing interview beginning of May 2022. And this was exciting and we couldn't believe it. We made it happen. We got him there. And unfortunately, what happened is they gave him false expectations. They made it seem like this guy was moving in tomorrow, and come to find out, this guy had not, the other person had not even vacated the unit yet. So the unit wasn't even available yet. So this is, you know, an instance where false expectations come into play, and were really detrimental because he continued to couch surf saying like, you know, my ship is coming in, I'm going to be housed any day now. And I was really weary that this was not true, because that's generally how the process not works. As Ramon mentioned earlier, there's always more paperwork. You ask for it all at once, but somehow there's always more paperwork. So yeah, he was offered a shelter. And I think, as Jason mentioned, you know, respect people's wishes around shelter, try to make sure folks know what they're going into, try to support them there. But for this situation, it seemed warranted, and he had agreed. And thankfully we found a shelter that was decently supportive. And so that way he had a consistent place to stay and to be accessible to the rest of the housing process. So continue with the ongoing paperwork. There was always more. And worked with him on his home stretch application. For folks who have not heard of the Home Stretch Fund, please get the training. This is a real tangible resource and way to help folks. They can help with security deposit, first month's rent, and furniture costs. Make sure you know the ins and outs of this application, because you have to dot all your I's and cross all your T's. It takes some time to have your client do the shopping for their household furnishings, and also it must be done within 30 days of the client moving in and signing the lease. Otherwise, the county will not do it. They will not do it. And I can't emphasize this enough. And I know sometimes I might sound like a jerk to clients when I'm talking about this, but the reason why I'm so strict about it is just because I know worst case scenario would be that folks don't get what they need. And that's a big thing I emphasize is, you know, we're doing what we're doing here to get you what you need. So anyway, so the kind of wrapping up his story, this gentleman who had that interview in beginning of May moved in the beginning of August 2022, and he is now housed. And yeah, so we are still working on some of that final home stretch stuff, having some difficulties there, and that's getting the stuff from the property management is tough. It really is. So continue to support them. I think a big thing is that recognizing that some of folks' supports disappear as they go into housing, and some folks who are funded to be supporting them just while they were homeless, they have to pull back due to their funding. So try to find ways to weave in and provide ongoing support. And what I'd like to leave you with is just remembering hopefulness and hold on to it for the person and infuse it into their support system and to reinforce it on their team, because this is huge, and maintaining that hope that it is possible is one of the best things that you can do for someone, even when you yourself as a case manager, it doesn't feel possible. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Cassandra, and thank you for sharing that hopeful story too. It's always good to end on, even though it was an epic multi-year process, to find that somebody actually was able to get housing in the end when you really support them through this really arduous process. So taking an honest and empowering and hopeful therapeutic approach, we heard that from all three of our panelists and also Judy and Angela today. Supporting people to get all your documents ready. You heard Ramon and Jason both talk about all the paperwork that they had to fill out for all these different applications, and also to disclose everything at the initial assessment so you have as many housing options as possible open to you. Everybody also described having multiple paths. For example, even with temporary shelter, a shelter is not for everyone. It's not a safe place for everybody. It's not an empowering place for everybody. So thinking about, is it better to be in your car, couch surfing, something else, or is there a shelter that works for you, right? So really looking at multiple paths for both the temporary part and also for the long-term part, the coordinated entry long-term process, as well as other housing waitlists. Like, do it all, because you don't know what will work out in the end. And then you heard also Jason in particular, and also Ramon, really having multiple support people in place. And Cassandra was one of them for this client as well. Having many different people who you trust, who are positive for you, who are professional, who give you hope, having those people around you to support you through this very long and complex process, but it can happen. And that's where the grit really pays off in the end. So really, thank you all. Thank you so much to all the panelists and presenters for sharing today. And in our last few minutes together, I want to open it up to everybody to ask questions. We do have a 30-minute optional discussion for those who can stay longer and have more questions. Please unmute yourself at this point and you can type your questions into chat. Sammy, if there are any questions that you think we should discuss in these last few minutes together, please unmute and let me know, because I can't see the chat. And then also a reminder to protect people's privacy and not share clients' identifying information. So just want to give you a few minutes to share any questions.
Sophie, there was a question that came up during the discussion. If Judy could speak to the credit repair process, which is probably an important one for a lot of folks.
Great, Judy.
Okay, I'm here. What would I want to say about the credit repair process? First of all, people are, everybody, every consumer is entitled to get a free copy of their credit report annually. It is a good idea for, I think, for all of us to take a look at our credit report to make sure that there aren't any errors. A lot of times there are mistakes that if you have enough advance notice, those by law, the credit reporting bureaus need to correct any errors that show up on the report. So definitely getting a hold of the credit report ahead of time and addressing things that show up. Sometimes people don't really know. They may have been in a situation where they moved out of a rental because they knew that an eviction was about to happen. It's important to know whether that landlord actually got a judgment against you for possession of the unit for money, or whether they dismissed it when they knew that you were gone, because that can have a big impact on what your rental screening is going to look at down the line. So just for information to know where you stand, it's important. For credit cleanup, there are nonprofit agencies that are available. Housing and Economic Rights Advocates is one, Spark Point is another. I don't have the information like off the top of my head, but one thing I would definitely say is never, ever, ever, ever retain the services of an agency that charges you money to do credit cleanup. There's resources out there that will do that work at no cost to you. It's arduous, but if you're working on that while you're applying for housing, and again, like Jason mentioned, even pursuing parking tickets, getting as much as that as you can, like cleaned up and wiped away, is important. And it's something, since it is time consuming, it's good to be doing it while you're applying for housing rather than to try and like scramble at the last minute.
Thank you,
I'm
Judy.
sorry, I wasn't prepared for the question.
No, that's okay.
That's kind of the best I can do on the
No,
spur of the moment.
That's great. Thank you.
Can I
Lisa.
lean in on this?
Yeah,
Sophie?
Ramon, if you want to share about that, and then we're going to close up.
A quick thing that you can do that's free, you can actually repair some of your own credit without having to pay. Some of the apartment complexes have a differential of how much outstanding credit you can have as opposed to what you may have. Some of the cleanup process is maybe just making arrangements with your creditors saying, I can pay off $5, $10 a month. That will show that you are now making consistent payments. That can change your credit score. It changed that differential. Something just as easy as making a payment arrangement, or like Judy said, disputing some of those bad things or some of the existing credit during the time frame when you are applying, it gets you in.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sophie, one or two last things. For a lot of places, even for housing that's available under HOPA, where you're looking at a person who's going to be paying 30% of their income for rent, a lot of times the cutoff is $2,500, like or 7 or more accounts that are delinquent. So it's a pretty it's easy to see how somebody who has been in financial difficulty for a long time might have unpaid debt at that level. I mean, there's an unfairness built into that.
Thanks, Judy. We're
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We just have to close up. So before people leave, I want to make sure, thank you so much for that guidance around the credit repair stuff. There's a lot of rich information in the chat too, but before you leave, I want for folks who cannot stay longer, I want to share these polls with you because we want to make some decisions for our next sessions. So just like many thanks to all our presenters and panelists for sharing their experiences and their wisdom. We have 3 poll questions for you, which is to follow up on how you want to meet in the spring workshop. So it's you personally. Would you want to meet in person indoors or virtually on Zoom? And the reason I say in person indoors is that we cannot find a good outdoor space. So we're just going to say in person indoors or virtually on Zoom. So where would you prefer personally to meet? And then what topic do you want for the spring workshop? So we're trying to figure out what speakers and presenters to have, mental health resources and referrals, mental health skills that we can use ourselves and for clients, updates in substance use and overdose prevention, or injectables, PrEP and HIV treatment. If you have something else that's not listed here, please type it into the chat. The third question is, what are our strategic priorities for next year? The first one is around, the first 2 are around housing. So housing nuts and bolts and more detailed training. So really taking, the details that Judy started talking about around credit repair, and then the details that are in the guide that Angela and Judy shared, and some of the nuts and bolts of what Jason and Cassandra and Ramon all talked about during the panel discussion to really a deeper dive into that. Street and shelter HIV services, mental health, like I mentioned before, substance use, injectables, home testing, mobile services, emergency room linkages, HIV leadership, youth pipeline programs, or youth adult partnerships in health education. So if there's something else that you think should be a priority for our network next year, please type it into the chat. And I'm just going to give you 30 more seconds to answer the poll. I'm just going to keep the polls up. If you are done with the polls and you have a moment to do the post-workshop word cloud, you're welcome to do that, to go back onto the poll polev.com/EBGTZ, or go back to your text message thread and text a word. You're welcome to do that. See if something shifted for you from the first part of the program to the last part. And if you're on your browser, you can refresh it to get this new.
Okay, hi, I had a question actually for Cassandra. Thank you so much for sharing about the different resources. I was looking at the home stretch also about the furniture. That's a really excellent resource. Do you know of any other resources to help out, like with moving in, like with move-in items, household items, or furniture as well, in addition to this?
That's the biggest one I know of, and it's great because it's specialized to this need that you can access it when you are homeless and moving into housing, or I think the other criteria is at risk of homelessness. So have clients take advantage of this while they are uniquely eligible. And I say that because the other resources out there, they're not uniquely eligible. It's a bigger pool of folks. So I'd say prioritize this one, but additional resources are Seasons of Sharing. And that's this one-time crisis financial assistance, and you'd have to be a Seasons of Sharing certified or just trained anyways worker. It's not that hard. You go to a training and they tell you who's eligible and gather all the documents. The other resource is Cardia, but in terms of we would have to talk to Shaylee a little bit more of if something like first month's rent, if that would qualify for Cardia, considering that's usually for delinquent rent, but we'd have to ask Shaylee at Cardia if that is something that Cardia would be able to help with in terms of security deposit. Also, the great thing is that Homestretch helps both with security deposit, first month's rent, and furniture. And I think the furniture part is the only thing that's really, really unique to Homestretch, the fact that you can do that too. And it's up to, I want to say, $4,000 in budget, which is pretty substantial. Seasons of Sharing is also able to do this too, but it's a preset list, so folks aren't really able to choose. And it's only a couple items like bed, dining room table, and like nightstand, and maybe one more thing. So it's a bit more limited. So that's what I have to say on that in a quick thing there. Thanks.
Okay,
Great, thank
so
you.
the home stretch, sorry, real quick. So the home stretch will reimburse then, and they will have to pay up front, or will they pay beforehand?
Allison, this is Judy. What they will do is they will pay the landlord for the security deposit and the first month's rent. When you go to choose furniture and household furnishings like bedding and pots and pans, you establish a registry, and then the county, it's actually under Healthcare Services Administration. What they will do is they will purchase everything, and then it is delivered to the new resident. The issue is you need to be coming from a situation of literal homelessness. You can have been housed, but it needs to be for less than 6 months. So it only works for people who are couch surfing. It's not going to be an option.
We are going to pause there. We can continue the conversation after we close up for the main program, because there's a 30-minute optional discussion. So I just want to show you guys the before and after. This is the word cloud we have so far. Definitely more hopeful words: joy, safety, motivated, empowerment, hopeful. And you can see this is what we had prior the workshop. So expensive, frustrating, some frustrated emojis. And then just want to close up for people who need to leave for the last half hour. We have links in the handouts to get more information. Upcoming events are November 3rd, Prevention Network meeting, December 2nd, World AIDS Day. And then you can email zj@ebgtz.org to join our lists and groups. And now I'm going to stop there so that we can have more discussion and you guys can talk more about Homestretch and how that, and just like furniture help and all that stuff, move-in help. So thank you all who need to go now. We really appreciate you being here, and we're just now going to open it up to a general discussion and Q&A with more details. So thanks so much.